Thank you for coming. You are welcome to our first OSM workshop. And I think that for those who already know OSM and has been attending the previous workshop, there will be many new things for you guys, so it will be worth coming. And obviously for those who this is for you the first OSM workshop, it will be even more interesting because you'll discover a lot of things that have been going on for the over 1 year that OSM has been out there. So both of you are really welcome. So let me reintroduce for you what would be this session. As I'll have one opening on what OSM is and to understand what is the scope of OSM, etc. What is the extent of this community? What are its objectives? And what we've achieved during this year. Then you have one statement from the end user advisory group of OSM, service providers in OSM community. As you'll discover during this session, they have a special role in OSM. Then we have some technical sessions with starting by the chair of the technical steering committee of OSM, who will Adrian Hogan, who will introduce you what have been the main achievement of OSM, what have been the architectural principles behind it, and I think that you'll enjoy that session because for those who are more technical, you'll really like those details, I expect. Then we'll have some hands-on sessions. We'll show you OSM in motion. We have some technical problem because some of the speakers are on the plane coming, so hopefully we'll have them back then, but one never knows. Otherwise we'll take over, and because we are the people here are quite familiar with those with use of OSM, so but I'd rather to have the best experts during the session, so they are coming. And we'll have one introduction of some of the POCs and demos of based on OSM that has been created during this year. You'll see that we have many use cases already running under OSM and others that are coming, and I think that you'll enjoy it. And we'll have one wrap up from the chair of the marketing task force of OSM, telling you how to get engaged with OSM community, how to understand what have been our activities beyond the pure production of code, and hopefully you'll get you'll feel invited enough to join OSM community. Okay. So, as an let me see if I can. Okay. So why OSM? So what is OSM doing? The objective is pretty simple to describe. You know that in the management and orchestration there's been plenty of implementations, and that fragmentation has some bad side effect, is that there's uncertainty on some basic questions that you'll need to ask for real in production. One is if I am a BNF vendor, what does it take to onboard my BNF in a particular service provider's environment? Do I need to go through a painful integration process there? And if so, after going through that integration, will my BNF behave as expected or not? So that is clear, the sense of uncertainty. The second is putting the hat of the service provider, is how will I operate that in practice? Not as an individual BNF, but as part of a network service. And how can make it convenient for me and not more complicated? And the $1 million question is, how will this interact with my existing deployments? Can I integrate it with my other systems? Or how can I integrate it with my physical network functions that are already there? Those questions for me are very essential in practice, because they are create natural barriers, natural hurdles there. And the objective of OSM is precisely to bring clarity there. Yeah? So in NFV, many of you perhaps know this picture. The objective of NFV is to have replaceable components that can be safely and automatically assembled. That is the objective. So you have some Lego pieces and you can build a network service, a castle, based on them. So the network pieces are the BNF catalog, and the network service is the castle, right? So in order to add more pieces to your catalog, you have the onboarding process that comes via the descriptor, the BNFD. So that's part of that process, and hopefully you can create a blueprint, and that will be the network service descriptor, and that will be the castle. That is the theory, right? The practice doesn't look like that, unfortunately. So first we have an uneven BNF modeling. So there are not that many commonalities among the BNF. They exist, but they are not properly modeled. So the onboarding, unsurprisingly, is really hard. So you end up having a catalog like this, where every piece is completely different. You expected that the network service will help it, but it's sort of as a sketch. So after a lot of effort and ad hoc integration, you end up having something like this. And that is the reality that many of you have suffered during these years, and many service providers will tell you, right? And that is one of the showstoppers for being braver in the deployments, because it's a lot of effort and a lot of dollars spent in that process. So what is the objective of OSM? Is to deliver a production-ready quality MANO stack that can, very important, have a well-known information and data models. So there's no ambiguity there, and that platform is capable of consuming them, right? It's available for everyone, very important. I will discuss about that later. So there are no uncertainties. It's not a theoretical exercise. Suitable for all BNFs, not just for a subset of them. Operationally significant, that makes the service provider's life easier and not more complicated. And independent of the beams and the infrastructure underneath. That is very important as well, because the market, in terms of the infrastructure and beams, is not homogeneous. And there are good reasons for not having it homogeneous besides the own competition. It's because there might be some optimizations that will require that you have different type of technologies in the infrastructure, in practice. So that said, OSM is not starting from scratch. It never started from scratch. We have taken very seriously, and we are taking, not only from the foundation, but today, we are taking very seriously the work of NFV ISG work. That's been the foundation of all this. We must remember that. That doesn't mean that we can be of help there, so we are also providing feedback to ETSI and NFV to make the specs gradually better, because we are taking them as input, and we are checking them in reality and giving some feedback, which are deltas. It's not expected to change the whole thing, but just saying, look at, if you add this and this, or add more clarity here and there, it would be better for everyone. So that is the kind of feedback that we have. So we have some freedom in our activities, but our plan is obviously is the harmonization, right? And all this activity, what we expect is that we enable an ecosystem of BNFs that are compliant with that information model, right? That is the idea. If once that you have that, it facilitates the life of everyone involved in the supply chain. Because you are a developer, you will be testing locally based on that information models already and the same images. And then you bring them to a pool where that will be tested for real with larger scale or whatever, and still will be using those descriptors. And whenever you bring it to the service provider, you will be bringing the same descriptors and the BNF images across the chain. So that is a game changer here. Okay? So you can, so here also the blueprint, the footprint of the orchestrator matters, because you need to run it locally, right? We'll come back to that later. And from the perspective of the service providers, since this is a community that's been instigated by service providers, as you know, we wanted to change the game as well for the way that we operate things. So we want to make sure that we can parameterize the network service and interact with it as in a transactional way. We can define high-level primitives per network service, and we can particularize some of the attributes. So we can customize the deployments based on the same template, something that is part of the promise of virtualization in general, but now applied to the telco industry. Okay? And we are in a good way to that direction, by the way. Okay? what is OSM scope? Because this is one of the recurrent questions that we hear. I mean, everything that is required to deliver a production quality MANO stack as defined as the management and orchestration required to create those network services end-to-end. Okay? That means that we have some components that will be running during all the time, right? And that will be the ones that will be driving the processes, and at the design time, something that will help us to create the descriptors, to manage the network services, etc., okay? But there's one obvious difference, because obviously the elements in green are not subject or standardization or anything, are mostly related to the user experience, okay? But still you need them in order to have some piece of software that is usable for human beings, right? So that is part of the extended scope that OSM provides, right? You'll notice some of the components that do not belong to OSM but are supported, and that's very important. Because one of the foundational aspects of OSM is interoperability. It's not about boiling the ocean or doing everything yourself. If there are good, solid solutions in the industry, your business is to try to interact with them successfully, not to recreate them from scratch. So that's what we took from the very beginning as one of the foundational aspects, and that's why we have a set of plugin models for them, and very good contributors to maintain them. So we have, obviously, we have interaction with OpenStack, but with native VMware environments. Now we've created interaction with Amazon Web Services. I think it opens a huge amount of new use cases for hybrid cloud. And it's just because we can leverage on the plugin model and the mindset of interoperability instead of recreating everything from ourselves. The same happens with SDNs. As you see on the left, we have some of the major, I would say the major SDN controllers from the open source space, and nothing prevents us to support others because the framework is created. So it's relatively easy to create a plugin for them. You have, you can see there ODL, ONOS, and Floodlight, and hopefully in the near future we'll see others, right? You'll see more about this picture. I won't spend much time here because it will be part of the architectural session later. Okay? But you get the idea on where are the limitations in terms of scope, what things we want to do internally, what things are subject to interoperability and to allow fair competition. So the point is why OSM can be successful in this challenge. There are three unique things that are worth mentioning. One is that OSM community is really large and diverse. Actually, it's the largest community out there on the telco space. With 66 member companies as of today, probably this will be outdated very soon, but as of today, 66, okay? There are some others in the pipeline, so since this session is recorded, remember to double check the number of members when you watch it. With 9 global service providers, as you see, all the leading IT and cloud players, and many VNF providers that you'll see, and others who are joining. That diversity, being large is very good, but being diverse is really good as well, because it brings of course, all the aggregated demand, but also all the aggregated expertise, and that is awesome. It's a lot of wealth in the way that you interact, and you don't know everything by yourself. You need others giving it a try and telling you what you don't do well, okay? And adding new features and new requirements. That is how this works. That is one of the reasons for success. And we are not stopping here and say, okay, this is now a closed club of 66 or 60 whatever companies, that's all we need. It's open to fellow travelers. And intentionally, the barriers for participation are really low. And that's thanks to ETSI, by the way, because they had this model already in place in ETSI and AV, so they simply replicate it for ETSI OSM. So for ETSI members, it's very simple, just sign in the usual CLA, and it's free participation. And for those who are not ETSI members, can also participate, which means that they sign the usual CLA and pay fees per face-to-face meeting, as in ETSI and AV, which essentially, if you don't attend face-to-face meetings, it's free as well. So pretty low barriers. And even if you are just a casual contributor, just want to do some minor changes in OSM with no participation in the governance of the project or anything, you can still do it as individual developer. I would not recommend this option because this gives you the less traction with the community, people will interact with less agility with you because you'll have less tools at your disposal, but still it's possible, and there's a lot of interaction via that way that obviously is not accounted at the 66 companies. Second point that I think is one of the reasons for success is that OSM embraces the complexity required for deployments in field. It's not a theoretical exercise, it's never been. It's not surprising because being an initiative that was being instigated by service providers from the very beginning, it's obvious that we brought our list of pain points already and put them over the table. So one thing is that the EPA support was not avoidable at all, because in field you need some certainty on the way that the BNS will behave, particularly those that are intensive in traffic. So and as you see, there are 2 orders of magnitude at stake that will make the business case to work or not. So it matters that the orchestration is aware of that. Second is that it's a fact that in a large community of many service providers, you don't have the same views on the technology that you want to use in the infrastructure, or even it is even more likely that you have several technologies in your infrastructure, and you have good reasons for that. And the question is how to interoperate with them. So from the very beginning, OSM has been multi-beam and multi-SDM. And by extension, the support of public cloud that has come very recently as one of the features that we had implemented in OSM. And we expect to extend it in the near future because it opens a new set of use cases and business cases extremely interesting. Third point is in multi-site, and you are managing a heavily distributed infrastructure, and you need to make sure that your orchestration takes that into account somehow. It's not rocket science, but you need to take it into account from the very beginning, because otherwise it will be a nightmare to add it afterwards. And fourth point that I think that you have heard during the whole morning in all the tracks is about greenfield and brownfield. I mean, you always would like to start from greenfield. And in your lab always have greenfield. But the reality is brownfield. And you need to make sure that you can interoperate with both. That you can create your new network if you want, you get ready for the new generation of your networks, that's fine. And we all want that, but we want to start from the current networks that we have if needed. So that's been another of the key points that were foundational in OSM. And I think that we are doing pretty well, and you'll see in some of the demos that we are doing pretty well in that direction. I've mentioned one word several times, interoperability. Interoperability is the key here. I mean, I won't put names here, but I could, but I won't. Okay, on different service providers and their own architectures. And each of them have a name, by the way. So they are our babies, where we think that we are the right ones in our architecture. In the case of Telefónica, the architecture is called Unica. In the case of other service providers, they have a different name. All of them cool names. And more or less share some of the components, but the point is that they are slightly different. And that will not change, believe me, in the short term. So the point here is that you need to look for the commonality instead of trying to force that everyone follows the architecture of service provider 1, 2, or 3. By the way, in most of the cases, the real case will look like the third one with different combinations of components. So the focus here, if you want to drive something that you have in common with other service providers and create that demand and create that homogeneity, you need to focus in what needs to be common. That is why the approach based on interoperability, instead of trying to build the architecture yourself, makes a lot of sense. We are well overpast the way where you created a huge project that did everything and integrated everything themselves, and that's all. We are in a world where we need to embrace competition, alternatives, and diversity. And who does not understand that is dead on arrival. Okay? So we realized that very early, and that's the reason why we went to this path. And we are still confident that this is the right path. The third point is that the OSM did not start from scratch. We could have tried to start from scratch and start a theoretical exercise, a clean slate, and we could have done that, but we didn't want to, because we needed to create and enable a market very early. So we need to start from a sound basis and make it better together. So we started from 3 seed codes, talking about convergence, that were already well established back then. I mean, you have open source MANO was as the piece of resource orchestration, but we had also RIFware, that was brought as the service orchestration element in OSM, and we had Juju. All of them independently were quite mature back then, and were in production already for different contexts and different use cases. The point is that having them together in an homogeneous fashion, as you'll see in the architecture, enables a larger set of use cases together, and that is the magic of trees. So the code that help us to avoid over-engineering from scratch, get traction, and improve via credibility, improve the work in other forums via credibility, that we are testing things for real. And that set that became an initial starting point over the successive releases of OSM, 3 now. This has evolved substantially, and the code doesn't look like the one that we had at the seed code. So we are also showing that as a community we are evolving it together. That is excellent. We didn't know if that would be successful when we started, but that's proven to be an excellent starting point. So there's no longer an open MANO, RIFware, and Juju elements. They exist, of course, as entities and blocks, but we need to make sure that new features are enabled together in harmony. That is a community, right? Even back then, we were able to demonstrate the full concept with a really complex demo that I'll invite you to revisit whenever you have time. And it's in our website, the full video recording the step by step. And perhaps this afternoon, if we have time, we can revisit it as well, because it's long to follow and there are many steps. But essentially, it's enabling in a VPN service across the globe, creating some value-added services and plugging them to the VPNs. Okay, was 1 year ago already. So we have but we are doing better than that. Was a starting point. So since then, what we've done is that we started in February showing that demo, 2016. And in April, we kicked off the project formally, when we had our first face-to-face meeting. 1 month later, 1 month ahead of schedule, because actually we were targeting June, but we did it in May, we managed to create our first release with some evolution of the seed codes, so they could be packaged together, installed smoothly together, and they interacted properly. So that requires some changes and some working community already there. So that was our first release. We call it 0 because back then we didn't have enough time in 1 year, in 1 month, to engage the whole community in that process. So we were humble there and we call it 0 instead of 1. That was the reason for that odd numbering. But in October is when we release our first release in terms of community, because since April to October we had enough time to engage the whole folk community that was large back then. And that was our release 1 in October. And that's been a big success. I'll tell you later details. With that release 1 evolution of that one, we participated in the first ETSI NFV plug test. That, for those who are not aware with that, is an event where you have, it looks like a blind date of different components in a global end-to-end NFV orchestration. There's one row, and you have 2 other elements where you need to interoperate with. Okay? And we're that confident. Actually, we were participating with the expectation to do wrong so we could learn. We learned, but we did pretty well, as I'll tell you later. Okay? So that's good news. We didn't see that coming, by the way. And then we've just released our release 2. That is a huge leap forward towards the production readiness that we aim to. Actually, we are targeting production readiness by the end of the year, and we have the release 3 in the middle. So I think we are in a good way, and we are progressing pretty well on that direction. About to release 1, because now it's the old release, right? So we won't give much credit to that release, but that's been really successful, that release. I mean, 3,600, more than 3,600 downloads of that, only of that release from over 70 countries. Perhaps many of you didn't know that there were so many countries. There are. And very important, since we are running and upgrading the code, we are tagging it, so we have major releases, but we are tagging intermediate releases where we consolidate the feedback during the release cycle, we have had over 6,500,000 upgrades or fresh installs, retrying with the new releases, seeing if the new requests had been incorporated or any bug fixes or whatever. So that is the degree of success and traction in the telco industry that OSM Release 1 has had. That is amazing. You can check these stats in OSM website in the front page. They are already available. Now they will be contaminated by the new downloads of Release 2, because now we have a peak on Release 2, so you'll see different figures, better than these ones, but I wanted to freeze them to give the right credit to OSM Release 1. Okay. About our participation in the plug test, I think this is very important. I mean, the objective, well, I mean, we were self-imposing some restrictions for us, because we wanted to learn, not to do well. So the first restriction is that we wanted one single descriptor for all the beams that were participating. So we did not customize the descriptor per beam. That's very important because that's one of the foundational aspects, right? So we wanted to make sure that our plugin model was operational in practice. In the practice, there was a wide range of OpenStack distros, but also we have a native VMware environment there. And well, the fact we didn't have public cloud there, so we couldn't test it back then. And the good thing is that we managed to interoperate with all the beams that were participating and all the BNFs. So we created a descriptor for all of them, the only MANO stack that could do that. And we were really proud of that. Not without effort, because in that process we learned a lot. We discovered many bugs that were not there, and I want to be very transparent that we discovered many things that did not work as we expected, and that's good. The good thing is that we fixed them, because if we hadn't learned, if we weren't brave to acknowledge that there were things that could probably not work, we had never discovered them and fixed them. There are things that you cannot discover at the lab environment. Here, as I said, it's like speed dating. So you've seen the huge amount of combinations that you could have in that environment. That was the reason why we wanted to be there. We must be there, okay? So there are some examples of things that you cannot recreate in a lab environment or in isolation. You'll never discover that unless that you try for months, okay? So it was a success from many perspectives, including the marks that you get, but also from the perspective of the lessons learned. Actually, this is the IOP matrix. This is not fake. It's only anonymized, so the names are not disclosed. As you see, everything is green. I mean, these are the combinations that were the random combinations of infrastructure and BNFs that were given by the automatic tool that created the speed dating. And they were not green during the whole week, obviously, but they became green during the week when we discovered what we were doing wrong or what was missing or whatever. And that's been certificated by everyone who was participating there. So we are really proud of this picture, to be honest. Last but not least, I mean, we're talking about interoperability, but also interoperability involves harmonization and acknowledging everyone else's work. I mean, it would be, now at this stage, with the previous slide, we could say, okay, we've discovered this. It wouldn't be true. I mean, we were leveraging on the work of other groups, many groups. I mean, not only in the telco space, but also in the cloud. But in the case of a telco, obviously, we need to give the right credit to ETSI. And we've discovered things that we didn't know, and probably ETSI didn't know either. So how's been our way to create harmonization? Contribute to there with our feedback. So we can find together how it could land in the specs to make the specs better. So it's what we did, and we created one contribution right after the release 1, because back then we had clear feedback to give, and perhaps we'll have some feedback after this release that will be in addition to this one. If it's not redundant, we'll create it, with over 100 comments to the current spec, so it was not a superficial exercise, around many hot areas that come from the APA, of course, the chaining, the nested network services, the life cycle of the network service, the connection points, etc., etc. It's available in ETSI portal for those who are willing to have a look, and we are progressing together with the ETSI NAV community to find that harmonization with this feedback, because, as I said, we are not reinventing the wheel. We are being good citizens here. we are providing feedback, but we are also open to feedback because we don't know everything, and we need to acknowledge that upfront. And we are lucky that we are getting that traction in terms of users. That's a wealth for us. It's not only about the recognition of how relevant this is, but also about our manner to make OSM better, getting others engaged in that process. So obviously having so many installs and upgrades and downloads has a lot of activity behind, for real. And that's bringing us a lot of useful feedback from the user community via an open mailing list that we have, no matter if you are an OSM member or not. And we are detecting very early any potential bug that is new, and we have not discovered many improvements in usability. Sometimes the last one who you think of is the end user. So you make sure that that is taken into account. It's helping us to prioritize new features and focus on relevant use cases, things that are sensitive for the community. Here, there's been something that is extremely valuable from release 1, that is the all-in-one installer. It's one click and you have it installed. Then you need to customize, of course, you need to configure what are the existing infrastructure that you have. You need to give it the IP address and things like that. You need to know them, because obviously we can't know upfront your brownfield environment, but that's facilitated a lot, that installation process and getting the people engaged. So we are fully aware of this value, and we are working actively to make the installer better. Now you have different installer options in release 2 for that reason, because having the user community engaged and making their life easier to try OSM and use it for their own benefit and criticize it if you want to, is good. It's really good for us. Okay, so we are standing on shoulders of others, not only on our own shoulders. And I should have started from the new release, right? But there's so many things that happened before that one that I didn't want to forget about them. So this is the release 2. Last week, we launched it, and brings a really comprehensive set of capabilities. So now we have a support of many VIMs, including public clouds. We have added ONOS to the set of SDN controllers that are supported by OSM. We have added a very cool feature about the SDN assist for chaining BNF with EPA. That's extremely important if you want to build an end-to-end network service that with high throughput requirements and IO intensive. So there have been some limitations in regular VIMs to support that actively, and you need some assist with SDN. Now OSM is capable of providing you that assist in case that is not in place in the VIM. So it helps you with a VIM with no support of underlay connectivity to handle underlay connectivity to drive it from OSM with the same descriptor. If you have it in the VIM, fine, but if you don't have it, you have the SDN assist to do it for you from OSM. Essentially, you are using the same descriptor. The one-click installer is much better now because we have many installation options that hopefully will make the end user's life easier. We have network service scaling. Very important, the door that we are opening to dynamicity here. Full day 0 and day 1 operations that were partially implemented in release 1, now they are fully implemented and we feel very comfortable with them. The multi-site network services and many improvements that we've added in terms of interoperability, stability and security. Okay, so all those improvements have been added in miscellaneous categories that I'm sure that Adrian will cover. About the API support, again, this is very important because it involves interaction with at different levels of the infrastructure. So you have your VIM, and the VIM is interacting with the compute and storage and creating some of the overlays, the networking that usually does a VIM. But also, if you need some dynamicity in the underlay, you can provide it directly from OSM. Of course, the other route is not excluded. If you have that underlay support in the VIM, fine. But if you don't have it, you still have this route. It'll give us a lot of options. Again, it's about enabling use cases. Okay, the plugin model is pretty successful, and for those who are interested in a particular type of VIM or SDN controller, please contact us because it's relatively simple to create a plugin customized for your needs. It's quite polished, the model, I would say. And very important, since we are claiming that we are supporting interoperability, and that involves backward interoperability and forward interoperability with new releases, we had realized from the very beginning that we had a network of, we needed a network of infrastructures. You can't have your own CI/CD environment installed in one location with one particular type of infrastructure, because it cannot help you to automate processes with different type of infrastructures, as I said. So what did we do? We leveraged on existing Hive infrastructure that ETSI provides of tunneling, so we could, the OSM members could bring some remote labs with the technologies that they support and offer commercially. So we can run automatically, or even manually if we need to, test against the different type of infrastructure and check that everything is in place. So it's not that we are saying that we are interoperating, it's that we are testing it actively to find if anything goes wrong eventually. Okay? It's the only way that we saw that could provide credibility to that interoperability, testing against the real infrastructure. Should we relax now? No. I mean, there are many things that we want to see. Okay. So we have the big target of end 2017 of production readiness, which is a big thing. We want to have an efficient software evolution. We have an efficient software evolution, don't get me wrong, but we want to make it better, because now we have a community that is much bigger than we had 6 months ago. So we need to engage them actively, and that's not trivial, right? And we want to make sure that they feel that OSM is theirs as well, not from those who were there 6 months ago. It's of every member and participant of OSM. Testing is going to play a central role in this release cycle, even more than it played before, because now we know the benefits after the black test, so we'll make sure that we'll extend that framework that we have for testing. We'll keep promoting the contributions and give them credit. We started one program of rewarding the biggest contributors in OSM, and we'll keep promoting that one and giving the right credit and visibility to the big contributors in OSM community. We'll keep growing the base of users. As you saw, the feedback loop from the end users is very important in the way that things are driven in OSM, so we'll keep facilitating that as much as we can. And of course, and this is why we are here, is because we need to explain what we do, because otherwise I will explain it on your behalf and probably won't do it that well. So that's why we are actively explaining what we do and how to get engaged. Okay? Bold statement, but it says everything, particularly in a community that is led by service provider. The goal of release 3 is production readiness, which is a bold statement. And that means that we'll focus on end-to-end features that will need to be enabled to create a telco-grade minimum viable product. Because right now OSM, believe me, is pretty sound for many use cases. As I said, the objective is to have anything that is valid for any use case, in theory, right? So that will require a delta that we want to cover in this release. Okay? The end user advisory group in OSM is key for this, and provide some input in a prompt manner. You'll see right now, and the use cases will help us to polish that inputs as well. So it won't be a theoretical exercise of features, but also we'll try to have some use cases that will help us to facilitate and to flesh it out in practice. So, of course, we want to do it by direction, and those who want to offer OSM in commercial terms, they will facilitate that visibility, and that's why we've opened what we call the OSM's ecosystem map. So it's a sign-in process where we'll give visibility to the different players. So some directions: the service assurance, role-based access control, improve the feedback to facilitate troubleshooting, extending the dynamicity and scaling, new types of beans and SDN controllers. It's likely that we'll see new ones in the next release. Nested network services will give some steps on that direction, and hopefully we'll progress on clarity on service chain. Okay, I mean, these are directions not only for this release cycle but for the future. So probably not everything in this list will be inside the release 3, but that is the direction that we are going. And that's it. What we want to preserve, we want to evolve, and we are evolving, and we are reinventing ourselves in every release. But to be clear, there are things that we really believe that must remain. I mean, we want to keep the pace of delivery. We can do better, but not worse. Because OSM participants want things that work for real, and they want them as soon as possible to make business. We want to keep following OSM's architectural principles that work extremely well, so we don't see any reason to change them, including the layering, the modularity, the abstraction, and simplicity. Things are complicated, but let's avoid overcomplicating them. OSM is opinionated. I said that we have a focus on interoperability, but we have some clear ideas, as I've mentioned. So we want to avoid to say that we are all things for all people. We need to recognize what it does today and what it doesn't. It's simply embracing the reality, okay? And we want to keep that reality. Check. We want to preserve and improve the current way of work. I think that we would do well, but we can do better. And we need to adapt to the new size of OSM that is really huge. So we probably will need to extend some of the channels that help keep the community engaged. So we are working actively on that, because we want that everyone feels included. And of course, something that we want to preserve is the meritocracy and technical competence that everyone who has any degree of responsibility in OSM has. And here I'm referring specifically to talking about the TSC, but also the module development leads, who have a lot of responsibility on how well is OSM doing, because all of them are in control of one module inside OSM architecture, and they fully understand end-to-end what's going on. They are a key piece in OSM, and we want that they remain so. That responsibility will come with some meritocracy and technical competence, not only in release 3, that will come, but in next releases. We really believe that this is one of the keys of the success. And that's all. If you want to learn more, of course, first thing, try the new release, the OSM release 2. It's the best way to get engaged to some degree. And the second, for those who are readers and can install it, there they have copies of that white paper after release 2. I think it's really well written and has many new things that you haven't seen in previous editions of our white papers. So you have printed copies, but if not, you can create more copies out of the electronic version. Everything is on our website, but I wanted to invite you. Yeah. And that's all. Any question?
Yeah. Actually, I have 2 questions. And the first one is the security orchestration in the scope of the OSM.
Sorry, say that again?
Security. For example, security policy and the security. Initially, put it in the security policy and update the security policy during the operation.
Yeah, obviously, security is a key part here. I mean, it depends. I mean, there are many ways to address this question. I mean, as part intrinsically of the platform, and the way that you interact with the platform and how you secure the interactions and isolation between different tenants for OSM is some of the big development themes for release 3. That's one topic. The other is how you create security among tenants for real, even if you have physical elements that you are sharing. And that's something that we have already enabled in release 2. So we make sure that the intruders have a hard time in that case. And of course, anything that might be related to the configuration of the network service and the harmonization of the policies across the elements is something of interest, and is part of the things that we are doing now at network service level. But I expect that in this release and in coming releases, we'll see better evolution of that in the path of application of policies and things like that.
Yeah, actually, I'm mainly referring to the application layer of the policy. For example, the virtual firewall.
Okay, but that is given. That is given. I mean, if you have one firewall or an IPS or anything, you have already examples of BNS of that kind that have been onboarded in OSM already, and we are using them in the use cases and POCs. So probably you'll find interesting information in those cases during the workshop.
Okay, thank you. And also the second question is, how do we get the support if we have some issue during, for example, trial the OSM?
Well, there are many channels to get support. Obviously, if you are part of OSM community, which is very easy, you have the full support, including the GoToMeeting sessions, the joint hands-on sessions, and everything. That is definitely what I would recommend if you are running some tests, because as you see, the barriers are very low. But if not, we have the informal channels. One of the informal channels, one is the OSM Tech mailing list, is written down that address in all our wiki pages. So you can drop an email with whichever consultant that you have. We have a lot of traffic in that list, by the way. That's in a basic fashion. And also you can get even an account of contributor in case that you want to file a bug in our Bugzilla, whatever, it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question before we move to the next presentation? Okay, thank you. So,